Okay. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, here we are on a midsummer day. Thank you, everybody. So the first item on the agenda is approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the May 8th, 2019 minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Ilda, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, and then I'll entertain a motion for the June 19th, 2019 business meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Tracy,
I'll second it.
seconded by Susie. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, and now we're on to public comment, and there's one person who has signed up, and that's Jerry Phillips. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Phillips, resident in Windham and a parent of public school students. I just wanted to make a comment, a sort of general comment about the situation in our schools and really the way the schools are perceived in the community. I'm just thinking about the fact that once again we struggle with a budget that we recommended, and we couldn't get that budget passed, and that led to cuts. And this is a depressing feature of our the way the schools are perceived in the community, that we can't seem to get the financial support that the schools have needed. And I've lived in Windham for over 20 years, and I've seen this pattern again and again and again. So I was talking to someone the other day who had experience of Newtown, and he was telling me that in Newtown, sometimes budgets are voted down if the budget is insufficient to meet the needs of the school district. And that just struck me as kind of amazing, because, you know, obviously across Connecticut, we're not untypical. There's lots of communities that are struggling with school budgets. But I thought, what would it take in Windham to even have a budget that isn't cut, let alone one that advocates an increase? And obviously we're not Newtown. Newtown is a wealthy community, and I understand the pressures that the state system of funding education puts on local property owners. So even with those provisos, I still thought, what would it take? And it struck me that what is needed is we need to change the community conversation. For too long, the conversation has been negative, and we need to find a way to turn it in a positive direction. And that is a responsibility that I think falls on the Board of Education, and it falls also on the superintendent. So what I'm urging is, when you do your retreat, that you think in that direction, because I think over the years we've missed opportunities to change the community conversation. I'm particularly thought about when the special master came here. I mean, I remember thinking at the time that it wasn't a good idea in principle, because it basically took away local control of education, which I think is unfair to the people of Windham. People in Glastonbury don't get their educational rights taken away, but we were going to have our rights taken away as a community. But I thought, okay, that's not good. But the one thing we might get out of this is truth. We might get some transparency. We might actually get to talk about what is needed in a school budget, how school budgets are funded, what the mill rate means, all of that. But unfortunately, the special master played politics, and he missed a golden opportunity to educate the community. He did some things with the budget that are now come back to haunt us. He took money out of the education budget and located some cost in the town budget, so that actually hid some of the problems. And now we are seeing the consequence of that. that people have been living an illusion about what it takes to run the school district. And I think, but at the same time, I think we haven't been transparent enough as a board, as a central office, so that I can kind of understand where people are coming from. I don't agree with them in terms of their resistance to school budgets, but I think this is an opportunity that we now have to seize. Because there's a lot of rumors flying around, as you all know, about missing money and all the rest of it. And maybe it's bad in one sense, but maybe the good thing is we can get to that truth that we've not gotten at. We can actually get to a point where we can say, this is what it takes to fund the schools. And as a community, we can no longer cut. That can't be where the conversation begins. The conversation has to begin with, what do we need? What are we legally required to do by the state of Connecticut, who actually are, the boards of educations are trustees of the state of Connecticut. And I think we have to start acting that way. And we have to ask the state to live up to its responsibility, but we have to meet our own responsibility as a town. So that what I'm emphasizing is, when you do your retreat, I hope you will think about this opportunity that in a sense, a crisis, but you can take this opportunity and you can use it in a positive way. I mean, because we have to confront the truth at last. And I think that's actually a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate those comments. Is there nobody else has signed up, but is there somebody who came in late who wishes to speak during public comment? Okay, so now we're on to reports, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. We had several accomplishment and recognition. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I think it's worth time to note that Barrow STEM Academy have several students that participated in the National Invention Convention. As usual, we usually have between 6 to 7 students, and I think this year they have 7 or 8 students that went to out of state and participated in the convention. So congratulations to Barrow. And we also have North Windham this year that we didn't have before. Not going to go over all the names, but lots of scholarship this year that were awarded to high school that graduated. Students from all range, from sports athlete to valedictorian, but a great number of students that received an award. I do think that although he's not here tonight, we want to recognize Coach Risley. Coach Risley was recognized as the National Wrestling Coach of the Year last week on June 26th in Utah. So let's give, he's not here. Can we give him a round of applause? There were 150 finalists across the country, and he was selected as National Wrestling Coach of the Year. So congratulations to Coach Risley. And we do want to recognize Sweeney, mark the 60-year celebration, hosting a special event on June 6th, a little bit late, but we want to recognize Sweeney 60 years of celebration. Their birthday was really, really celebrated with cupcakes and cakes and different things in the building. So those are the recognition this year. For this month, there are a couple others, but I believe you can have them there and you see them in the packet. During at the end of the school year, we always take the opportunity for the building administrators and central office to look at what took place in the current school year. How can we do better? What are the celebration and what are the next steps to improve? And also an opportunity for us to grow as leaders and as educators. And so we were very pleased this year with our Leader Institute that dealt with equity, and the agenda is in there. You can take a look at it. I'm not going to go over it, but it was very successful. I want to thank all the members of my team that participated and presented. It was really a collaborative effort, and we all left with new challenges, but also new opportunities of how we can improve the school district from efficiency to our operation to student achievement.
Dr. Garcia, who's Tanya Fleeting?
That's our aware coordinator, Project Aware.
Okay, thank you.
Summer school update, as you know, we have all the little ones and the big one in summer school. It started on Monday. I'm very, very proud of our summer school program. We have programs to meet the needs of all students, all range. We have K through 3, literacy and elementary. We have newcomers. We also have algebra camp. We also have credit recovery. This year we have a new SIFE program for newcomers at the high school. So as you can see, we usually have over 350 students for summer school. It was very interesting to see the algebra summer camp that you will think that incoming eighth graders will not come to school. They don't need to come. It's not mandatory. They don't have to they're not making up for credit, and they come eager every day to their algebra classes. So it's very nice to yes, and they're working very hard. So we're very pleased. And we also have extended school year for students that need that support. So I am very pleased of the hard work and effort of the team to provide different opportunity for students during the summer. I know a topic of interest was the transition of students from STEP to EastCon. STEP has been a very successful program for us this year. However, we believe that it can meet this need of students much better if we are partnered with another organization like EastCon and have additional resources that we do not have. However, we remain commitment to the students and to their parents, because these students are students from the Windham community, and we want to make sure that they receive their education. We have a good program this year with Mrs. Haddad, Joan Haddad, but today I have Mr. Conway and Mrs. Susan Cross, and I think Mr. Camacho is here. These are the original team members that participated in setting up STEP, and I want to thank them again. Without them, we could never have this program, and they're here to present to the board what the transition program would look like moving to EastCon. I have been in conversation with the EastCon leadership for several months right now, discussing with them how it would work. And one of the good features of this program is that they will be with other students, not only students from Windham, but they will be with students from other school districts. So Susan and Mr. Conway, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I know that we had a great celebration of the success of the STEP Academy at, I think it was one of our June meetings. But we want to sort of keep that ball rolling and make sure that the board is up to date on how it's going and how this transition is going to work. So we look forward to hearing from you tonight, and then we'll open up to questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We would like to start off with that the committee, we established a process to optimize the academic endeavors of our students during this transitional time. And that included a process that included certain things, such as a review of their records. That was included, but not limited to looking at their attendance, the credits that they have to earn to meet towards their graduation requirements, attendance, suspensions, whether it's special education, 504, et cetera, as well as any other notes that we may have had gathered during that time frame. Also making a recommendation for them to see what would be their best opportunity to go to school, whether it be adult education, LEAP program, going back to the Windham High School, whatever. So we made that recommendation as well. And then y'all all got a copy of the information that we sent, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so therefore we also, to celebrate some of the things that we did, out of the students that we did have, we have some students going to be going for adult education, about 3. And as you know, we graduated 10 students from STEPS Academy as well. We're going to probably anticipate on recommend about 10 to the LEAP program. We have 1 student that moved out of district. We also had about, say, 8 students that withdrew from the 2018-2019 school year, as well as we have 4 that resumed their education at Windham High School, for the grand total of 40 students that we had that was at STEPS at that particular time.
So Mr. Conway gave you the first step, which was reviewing the records. The next step would be to call in these students and their families to have discussions about their options. So while we've made these initial recommendations based on their records, the choice is really the students and the families to consider. There are a number of families who've already articulated that their students have decided to seek employment, and so though we didn't necessarily recommend them for adult ed, that may be the direction that the family and the student then chooses because of their choices. But those individual family conferences will begin actually tomorrow. We have a couple signed up already. And through next week, we gave ourselves to the 26th to have them completed by, just because there are some families on vacation. And then after that, we are working collaboratively with the LEAP program. The new principal will be meeting with us this upcoming week, hopefully. And so I think we have their applications. We'll assist the families in filling applications to whatever school choice that they have for themselves. And hopefully by August 9th, all of that process will be complete, and we'll have an idea of which program all families and children have selected and are currently enrolled in.
I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any questions. Yes. Oh, Mary.
Murphy was first.
Okay, Murphy and then Mary.
I have one. I noticed that this program is not for special ed. I don't know whether we had any special ed students last year, but how do we handle that?
So we will have to go back to PPT, and there are 2 students whom we may need to consider other alternative programs. And once I meet with those families and students, we'll discuss those specialized programs that may better meet those students' needs.
Okay, so they'll have to be outside of this program and within the usual
So
programs that Windham Public Schools offers or elsewhere?
it may be an off-site program, but it also could be, for example, Camino Alto here at the high school may be another option.
Mary?
I just wondered if, are there any, is there any information about the staffing at EastCon? Like, you know, they gave a kind of sample schedule, academic block, or with, do you know, are they gonna have full-time, like, ELA teachers?
They're having full-time ELA teachers, full-time math teachers, they're having full-time certified teachers.
And they just hired everyone? Isn't this a new program?
Yeah, so they've been hiring, they have advertised already, I know they're finishing with their principal. They've been advertising for the last couple of months, hiring their support staff and teachers, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Tracy?
Do we have transportation obligations with this? I know that they're not that far away, they're in Hampton, but with the escalating cost of transportation and if you look at our transportation contract and everything else, are we required? And it's fine if we are, I'm just asking, that's all.
So my understanding is the LEAP program will actually be housed here in Wyndham, down on the Main Street.
And Main
Oh,
Street.
at the QVCC building.
Right.
Correct.
But are we obligated to pick them up from their homes and bring them here? Bring them to QVCC?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay.
Murphy?
So this is a per pupil cost. Have we got an estimate for that yet?
Yeah, I estimated that for 15 students would be between $230,000.
What's the per pupil cost?
It's about a little less than 16,000.
What's the transportation cost?
I don't know the transportation, it will be with, whatever is in the budget for,
MHA.
Yeah, the question is, would the schedule accommodate busing within the existing bus routes?
I think as we meet with the LEAP program and as they are solidifying their plans, as of next week, we may have some better answers for some of
And that
those
also has been
questions.
part of the transportation either, depends on where the currently residing, so that everyone being entitled to transportation.
One of the things I do want to say is I just want to thank the members of this committee that has put all of this together and helped. Ms. Haddad has been extremely helpful during this transition and has offered to help assist with some of these transition meetings for some of our families that she's, established a positive relationship with. Mr. Camacho, the other Mr. Camacho, as well as April Shepon, who helped me really put together all the data so we could, as a team, collectively make some recommendations.
So I'm, Mark, in a second, but I just wanted to, following up on the question about the some of those open questions that we don't have answers to yet, will you make sure, please, that you send updates to the board as these issues get figured out? Thank you. I appreciate that. Mark?
Yeah, so we're estimating at this point 15 students?
For
for this
15,
program?
yeah, 15
So
students.
last year we had about 25. Are we anticipating discovering, just because 10 graduated, does that mean there's no 10 new students take their place?
How many was said we had there currently?
So we're recommending the existing of 10 that would be going into LEAP.
Correct.
Again, I'm not sure. There may be other students as the year goes on at Windham High School that would be appropriate for this program.
So we estimated right now 15, and that's put us below the $250,000.
So your estimate of 15 is based on what we've identified as 10, and you're
10, adding 5 more.
Adding 5 more for
Mhm.
the, okay.
From the high school, from the current high school population?
All from,
Or there could be kids that move into.
could move into the district, could be anywhere, just adding 5 more students.
Any other questions? We appreciate all the work that's going into this, and we look forward to
Thank you,
hearing
thank you.
updates. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And then, you have one more item under superintendent's report?
So, what you have there in front of you is a list given to my director of HR. where you see the resignation and retirements, the different schools and the number. These are those certified teachers. In my Friday packet, I will give you the name of who exactly are the teachers that are resigning on return. But what you have here is just the school and the numbers. But I will give you the names in the Friday packet information.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. For the rest of the board, at the request of several board members, I've asked to have a regular report on the actual names of the teachers and staff that are moving out for whatever reason. And so we just couldn't have it ready for today's packet. It'll be prepared for us in our next packet. Okay?
So, the other thing it's that the total here, resignations and retirements is 49. Is that an unusually large number, a normal number? It's not a small number.
No, where's my packet?
It's about 15% of our teaching staff, I think.
Well, you have retirements too, and so this year you have,
Yeah, but the retirements are only 7 out of the 49, so there's 42 resignations.
well, Windham Middle School this year have a large number compared to last year.
Yeah, it's
And-
alarming.
Yeah, Windham Middle School. And STEM, we have several teachers of STEM that move out of state, that moved to North Carolina, moved south. We have several, you said STEM there, but several of those teachers move out of state. The others are very normal. I would say the middle school and STEM are the two that are
Okay.
largest.
So how much of a struggle is it going to be to replace them?
Well, it's always a struggle to replace teachers across the state of Connecticut, and particularly in this area, but I know that they're interviewing, I know the director of HR are working very closely with the school, and I know that they're interviewing on a daily basis.
Are we required to approve resignation? We used to approve resignations and appointments, and then sometime in last year or so that has ceased.
Well, the board is not required to approve resignation appointment, it's not a requirement, and you're totally right, Mrs. Lambert, we used to bring them to you, and they were board packet, it was always there. And then during a conversation, one member of the board suggested that that was not something that needed to be done, and the board, I don't know what the board said, but it was decided that night that we didn't need to put it in the packet anymore, and we follow the request of the group that night, so.
Well, we're changing that pattern
No,
now.
you change it again, and we'll be happy to give you the information.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We're going back.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, if a person is retiring or leaving, we have to acknowledge that that's happening, but we don't have any say over whether or not they do that. That's their own choice, yeah. But it is important to pay attention to patterns, and that's why, we need to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, and we used to give it to you.
Yeah.
We used to give it to you, I remember, and then that night, one board member said, oh, we don't, and you guys went with the flow, and now you guys want it back, so we'll give it back to you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mary?
Well, I remember that conversation differently, but I would rather check on the minutes before I comment on that, but because I thought there was some legal requirement about the vote, not that we have any ability to say, yeah, they shouldn't leave or don't hire that person, but so I
We're
do think.
accepting the report.
Right,
Yes,
and
I
I
do,
don't
yeah.
believe that when the one person commented that we all said that it shouldn't be in here for that reason. However, my comment was more a few months ago, we heard that teacher attrition had stabilized but this looks like it's
Well,
peaked again.
We're just talking of 2 different years, so for the last couple of years, teacher attrition has been stabilized, but you're talking this year, you're talking only 2 schools here. You're talking Windham, not Windham. Windham traditionally has had a large amount of teachers, that's nothing abnormal for North Windham. Windham Middle School last year, the year before, had the lowest number of teachers leaving, was Windham Middle School. Actually, Sweeney, followed by Windham Middle School. So Windham Middle School had a large retention of teachers. Sweeney #1, Windham Middle School this year, 18-19, happened to be that Windham Middle School is not in that position. STEM a little bit high, but like I said, I know for STEM, that some teachers are moving out of state. That I do know. And Windham is normal, they have this number of teachers every year.
Like, the middle school, I can guesstimate, is that because they were unsure of leadership in that building. There were, discussions amongst teachers and stuff, and when Brett left, they felt like they had had some stability when Miss Fior left, And after her leaving,
Well,
they weren't sure what the next step would be,
well, let me.
so they started looking.
So let me tell you a couple that I know offhand. I know that the Coast Guard, the lady that married to the Coast Guard, they went to Puerto Rico Station in Puerto Rico. I know that a young lady, ELA teacher, is moving to California. I know that the other military wife is going to another duty station. So I know at least 4 of them that have to do with their spouse's work. The 2 military wives, I know that their husband is moving to another duty station. And by the way, they were just here 1 or 2 years, not that many years. And I know that 2 of them, one is moving to California, and I forgot where the other one. So 4 of the 12 I know have to do with husband, with their spouse's employment.
Yeah,
Well,
oh,
yeah, Mary.
sorry, I just wanted to say the teacher attrition retention is something that is long-term. So 1 year less, 1 year more is, you know, we have to factor those things in. But we have had traditionally a very hard time, and I think we'll talk about administrators a little later. That's even more concerning.
I can send you the number again up to last year. I believe I sent them before, but I will send them again. We have really stabilized the transition. We really increased retention of teacher of the year. I don't remember when I sent it to you, but I could try to send it to you again. I'll have to go and look for it. But yeah, I think this year, at the end of the school year, 18-19, we will see some unusual pattern, particularly in these 2 schools, right? Windham Center, not Windham Center, I'm
Oh.
sorry.
We're not really set up to have a full conversation about it tonight, but it is something that I'm putting in my notes. And we will figure out a time when we can have a more full conversation about these patterns. And I think now,
Thank you.
this is just sort of spurring people's thinking on, how we deal with this. You're right, it is an issue that, districts, particularly districts like ours, deal with, so. Any other questions, comments? I'm just gonna take a liberty here as the chair to just, thank, Margaret Chady and, the rest of the staff who organized the 4th of July, parade presents for the Windham Public Schools on last week. It was very nice, and for those of us who weren't marching in other parts of the parade or doing other things on 4th of July, it was very gratifying to walk down Main Street and have people cheering and applauding, and the teacher of the year, Dara Bowling, and in the truck, and to have the kids marching behind with the banners and staff that showed up too. It was a positive experience for those of us who were able to be there, and I want to thank Marion Murphy for coming and marching with us, and Dr. Garcia for coming up for the day.
Enjoyed very
It was
much.
nice. It was a good, I don't know, did any of you see us? Who weren't marching? It was,
No, we marched with another group, but we didn't see you.
yeah, we didn't see you either,
Must have
but
been ahead of you.
it's a big, long parade, so.
Yeah, it was.
Mr. Camacho and Mr. Ronald, for the truck, driving the truck, and
Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Randall O'Neill and Mr. Camacho for making sure there was transportation.
They got to sit in the
And they
truck.
got into the air conditioning.
Right. Anyway, it was fun. Thank you. And the signs and the
Yeah, the students, I
and,
mean, the
and
sign.
the props
Yeah.
and it was very heartwarming because there were some parents who dropped their kids off to march who really didn't speak English, who were there feeling it was very important for their kids to march in this parade, and it was just a really nice feeling.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
thank you for coordinating it. Great idea.
One more person I think we missed, and this is what happened in our Spain, is not Mrs. Janet Testa. She was also influential in helping us
Okay.
getting those signs up by the students.
Wonderful.
And she marched.
Great.
March, yeah.
Good job. Thank you.
No surprise
Thank
there.
you for indulging me. I just wanted to acknowledge that it was a new thing. It was nice. So we're on to committee reports, and I know there was a Finance and Audit Committee meeting earlier this evening. I know you had a lot to talk about on your plate in a very short period of time, so the rest of the board would really like to hear, although many of them were in that meeting, I think, but
Yes.
the rest of us would really like to hear highlights from that.
Well, the Okay, just to run quickly through the agenda for the meeting, we started by talking about where we are with the 18-19 budget, which has to balance according to state law. Now, we haven't got all the receivables and payables taken care of. The reason for that, and a lot of the bills don't get paid by June 30th. For example, if there were healthcare costs in June, we won't see the bills until July or maybe even August. So there are a lot of bills that come in late, and some of the payments that are due to the Board of Ed also don't get paid by the 30th of June. But at any rate, so the part of the issue is trying to figure out exactly where we are in achieving a balance and what reconciliation we have to do to make it come out even. And I think that we have figured out what is probably going to be necessary to make that happen. But we won't know for sure until we have all the numbers. So we also looked at outstanding budget transfers. It turns out that there have been a number of transfers that have taken place during the year that have not been presented to the board for vote. Ms. Parsiak is working through those and going through Munis and identifying the transfers that the board has not acted upon, and hope to have those ready for the board to consider in July. And then the latest Board of Finance meeting reduced or proposed to reduce the Board of Education General Fund budget from what was voted on, what was not successfully voted on in May by $326,000.
In June.
Yeah, in June. That's right. Well, it would have been May, but it got postponed in June. That's right. How time flies.
320,000, right? 27.
Well, whatever.
27.
Yeah, 320. Anyway, the superintendent discussed the possibility of doing some of the things that we would have done with general fund money by using some of the increase in alliance money. As was pointed out by members at the meeting, that means that some of the things that we would otherwise have done with the increase in alliance money wouldn't get done. Although they are, I mean, it's a question of whether we have 7 reading tutors or 12 reading tutors or, but if we don't have funds, there's a limit to how many people we can employ in things like reading and math tutors and professional development, which is largely the kinds of things that the alliance money funds. So at the retreat this summer, I think we'll be looking at where we are with the 1920. There are also a couple of expenses in the 1920 budget that we didn't have in March that we know will be larger. For example, the superintendent will be talking later in this meeting about the bus contract, which I suspect that the amount of money that's in the budget currently is not going to be large enough to cover what we're actually going to have to pay for busing next year. So we're going to have to also figure out how to pay for those increases in expenses with a budget that's going in the other direction. So we have some challenges that we'll probably have to consider in the retreat in August.
We don't have a
I'm sorry,
retreat. Our
September.
retreat is in September.
It's in September. I wish it were in August because it would be nice to be able to have this stuff figured out before we have a
Well,
budget vote. But
I
anyway,
think we're going to have some special meetings. I mean, I just
Yeah.
don't see any way around it.
probably. At any rate, yeah, we do need to be able to make a coherent presentation of where we are with the budget because there will be a public hearing by the Board of Finance before the next budget vote. We need to be able to tell them, what's happening with our costs, what's happening with our, I mean, their reaction is, oh, the state gave you another $800,000. But that's not quite the case. That $800,000 is committed to things. So we need to be able to tell them what we're not going to be able to do if they keep cutting the budget, as well as the things that we would be able to do if they didn't cut the budget. And also, we need to be able to talk to them about things like increases in the cost of busing. So we'll work that out over the next month or so, and we have a scheduled meeting in July, correct?
Yes.
And maybe we'll have to have another special meeting to do budget.
Is there anything that anybody who's on the committee or anybody else wants to add or ask or raise? Any other questions, comments? Mary?
I just wanted to repeat something I mentioned at the meeting about the state statutes on appropriations of budget by a Board of Ed, and that it says the state, a Board of Ed may accept or reject suggestions of the Board of Finance and provide them with a written explanation for a reason of the rejection. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean this, we can prevail upon the Board of Finance to, but I'm suggesting that we begin by, explaining what the harm is and what, we don't just make an arbitrary or random budget that they're allowed to cut at will. So and it's the schools, although the Board of Ed is an agency of the state, we have to work together as a town and not have, these lines drawn, town over here, tasking, we're all together and we have to accept that.
One sort of picking up on public comment made earlier on in this meeting. One thing that when Tracy was chair of the Board of Ed and I was chair of the Board of Finance, one thing that we did together as the chairs of the two boards was host a community forum on the school budget. Because it was one of those years where the budget didn't pass and we were going to referendum in September, I think it was. I can't remember.
Not when I was chair, but okay.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't when you were chair then. I mean, you were chair at the time. We were trying to pass the budget. It failed on the first time and we were going back to try to get it passed. And we hosted a forum at, it was at Barrows STEM Academy, and opened it up to the community. And, we could begin to think before we get to September 24th about hosting some sort of, not just the superintendent going on the road and hosting, community conversations about the budget, but figuring out a way to get several of the boards together to have a conversation that could be recorded or watched by the community if they can't show up, that explains the Board of Ed budget and what's at stake. What are the pluses and minuses that we have to deal with? So I'm just putting it on the table. You don't need to make a decision about it now, but it's a thought as far as opening up more community conversation about our budget. And we could decide that we want to go to, after we have another meeting and get a little more grounded, that we want to go to the Board of Finance and make some alternate suggestions. I mean, nothing's set in stone until they take that final vote to send the final questions to the public for a vote.
The referendum.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. So we're on to School Planning and Design Committee.
We haven't met because we had graduations and a new staff member coming on board, trying to get up to speed. Dawn and I had lunch 2 weeks ago now, last week, I don't know, whenever it was, and talked about priorities, what her priorities are. I was interested in hearing, what she thought could be done differently. She's still gathering information, she's still visiting buildings, she's still talking to people and staff inside the buildings as well as her own staff. So we're gonna give her a little while. I was gonna try and have a meeting yesterday, but that didn't come around with my schedule, and that's my own fault. However, the high school renovation committee, I just wanna add this as a dovetail, Mary and I both sit on it, and we are looking at budget on Monday, the 15th, and then we are looking to hire a consultant for environmental.
Yes, it's a dual thing. Is it commissioning and environmental?
Commissioning and environmental, going on farther into July. So those are the two things that are coming up with the high school renovation committee.
Is there anybody who has any questions? Okay, thank you. So that's about the shortest report we've had.
There was an actual meeting,
From that
so-
very busy committee. I look forward to when things,
Mary will be
Have
giving
more to report.
the next.
Mary will give the next
'cause I
report?
won't be at the next
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, great. Executive committee, we didn't meet on, oh, policy, sorry. Policy. I'm sorry, Elda.
Oh, that's okay.
Go
Go
right ahead.
ahead, go ahead. We'll go back to me.
Okay.
We'll come back.
Executive committee, we didn't have a meeting on July 3rd because basically either people weren't around or nobody wanted to meet on the evening of July 3rd. And so I wanted to get through this meeting tonight. I'm going to schedule an executive committee meeting in the coming weeks because there are numerous things that we need to keep moving along on, and I just want to make sure we don't drop the ball on them. So I'll stay tuned. I'll make sure I give everybody the date. Policy.
Seems to be the consensus. We didn't meet either. Folks were busy and, so we didn't meet.
So nothing new to report.
Nothing new to report, just the second readings we have to bring to you
Today.
today. Yes.
And we also talked at the last meeting, at the last Board of Ed meeting about following up on the recommendations made by our attorney about updating our, some of our policies, personnel.
Our outdated policies.
Yeah, our outdated, or not necessarily, I don't know whether outdated is the right word, but getting things in sync. So, I know that's a project that you have on your plate. We'll hear more when
After
it
the summer,
begins.
we'll, when folks settle down, because people are going on vacation.
Mhm.
Some of us won't be here this month either, the end of this month either.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that we kept our regular board meeting schedule for the summer. We didn't, go to a one meeting a month type thing. So it's our regular meeting schedule, and I will ask board members if, I know Tracy's vacation schedule, but if you're going to be away
I'll be away.
during, well, we don't need to say it all now, but if you're going to be away during the month of July and August, it would be really nice to pass me a note or send me an email and let me know so that I can make sure we have quorums at our meetings, because I don't want to ask staff to remain here and then have no quorum and not be able to, take action on things. And I think given where we are with our finances and getting ready for the budget and other things, we'll need to have a special meeting or two this summer. So, anything else? Okay, so we've had heavy negotiations going on concerning the school bus contract, which we went out to bid on earlier this year, and we thought it was time, and now we're in the process of trying to get that done. And do you want to kick that off?
Yeah,
There's information in the packet for everybody.
So we went out for bid about 2 months ago. I mean, this was new for them, for M&J to negotiate this lengthy amount of time with the school district, but we've been negotiating for about 2 months with M&J on the buses. And what you have in front of you is the proposal. We have come down, we have discussed about six proposals, Rita? Six proposals, 6 different proposals. And so these are the last two, and I bring it to you for your feedback and recommendation, feedback and suggestion before I make a recommendation. As you can see, one of their requests was that year one, that would be year 1920, had to be a year that they needed to have an increase in their contract. We were able to get them away from that, because year one for us means this current 1920 budget, and we had put a 3% increase in the budget, so we wanted to stay at that or close to that. We did not want to go much farther than that. But that you can see in option A, and even in option B, year two has a higher increase than the other 3 years of the contract, and that's what they call the adjustment period. So I brought both of you for your discussion and for you to give me some feedback. And of course, we don't have a budget for 2021, 22. We'll have to put that in the budget, but we do have a budget, well, a proposed budget for 19, 20. So we wanted to stay with what is in that budget, or close to, for transportation with M&J.
So I'm assuming people got a chance to look in your packet at the numbers. I just want to, before we open it up to discussion, I want to say the place where they started with us was extremely
Extremely
high.
high.
And I think it's very laudable that we've gotten it into a more reasonable range here. So open up to discussion. Or questions.
Yeah, the pattern is a little weird. In option A, all right, if I understand the way this table is put together, just looking at the bottom line, so this coming year would be $106,000 more than this year? Is that-
Yes.
Okay, but then 2 years from now, it'd be, $67,000 more than the previous year?
Because.
So we go up by 106, 196, then we only go up by 67, then we go up by 134?
Because they made their big jump in year 2. They made their big jump in, from option A in year 2. So that one is very high. One more thing that I want to bring to your attention that I did not mention here is that we also increasing the number of buses, and we also increasing the size of the buses. So we moving, the type 2 buses, so the 47 passenger buses, we moving from 10 to 5, and we're moving 5 more buses to 72 passenger buses, because particularly middle school students, I mean, we need buses that we can have large amounts of students, and the 47 passenger buses for middle school students, it just does not cut it. I
It's
mean,
not really 47 students, it's more like 30, because they're
Exactly,
bigger kids.
Exactly, so, I went on the buses myself, and I look at a bus that says 72 students, unless you're getting pre-K, 72, you can't get 72 middle school students on those buses.
And they'd be packed like
Right.
sardines.
Unless it's pre-K, 2 years old, 3 years old. But the issue is, by law, those buses are 72 passengers until the law changes. So that's something that they hold over our head. By law, they're complying with the law. There are 72 passengers, and they're giving us 72 passenger buses. But in reality, we cannot put 72 students on those buses except pre-K. So a decision was made, and I think it's a good decision, to increase the number of the 72 passenger buses and reduce the number of 47 passenger buses. But there is an increase also in those type of buses. They cost much more than the 47 passenger buses. So not only is an increase in the percentage amount, but also increase in the cost of the buses.
So can you explain what the percentage averages that we're looking at? I know you said it in the
So
memo,
we
but
started
for
at,
the public, they might- yeah.
we started at 18%. And I think I became a very good negotiator after these 2 months of negotiating with them. That definitely was not acceptable. 18% year 1, and we have reduced it to 4% year 1. But then year 2, you see that they're not going back never to 18%, but it's 4% year 1, and then depending on the option that we have, year 2 goes up 2 or 3% more.
Okay.
And then we go back and flat out in the rest of the years. Some of them are a little higher than others.
So, but over the total year period, it's,
Depending on the option that you have over 5 years,
Right.
it's either 25% or 22%, 27%.
My impression is that B would be easier to live with from a budgeting perspective. It's just,
I'm inclined to agree with that. But B is also the 25% increase because it's more evenly spaced out, correct?
B is higher than A, correct? But from a budget perspective, it's easier on the district.
Right, that's what, yeah.
Mark?
Well, that was my observation, is that it's obviously better to go with I think in my mind, to go with B because of the more evenness of the increases. I'm worried about that big jump in year 2, given the way our budget runs. So yeah, I would agree that B certainly looks like the better option for us.
Yeah, we're inclined to B also, but I wanted to bring it to your attention that way I could get some feedback from you. But Rita and I have been negotiating with them for the last 2 months, and Rita's an outstanding negotiator also, by the way. And MNJ have their team to negotiate, by the way. But I think we have done a pretty good job getting them down from 18%. There's no way we could have paid 18%.
What happens if you go back though and say your board says no, it's too high?
Well, I think this is like final for them. I think we're on the risk, we don't have a contract signed with them, so I don't know what their proposal would be. I mean, they're not, when you look at the overall, they are in the range now of what a contract would be for a 5 year instead of Connecticut. They are in the range. What I did was look at some research in this area and in different areas of Connecticut. And so in this area, M&J does have the business. I mean, they do the majority of the district in this area, except for maybe Vernon and some others district. But this is standard now. When they started, they were not. But this is standard for the different buses, different school districts across the state.
And this is the pattern that
This is the
you're
pattern.
seeing in other
In this area
negotiations.
and around. So one of the things I did was also ask EastCon to give me, to give me the pattern and what people are paying in different school districts. So they are in range right now.
Are they in range by year 5?
Yeah, they are in range.
Mary, and then Mark?
I just wanted to ask, are there any of them like electric or hybrid? I mean, is that a way we can save?
No, I don't think they have any hybrid buses, Doctor.
I think originally they wanted us to be giving them enough money so they could purchase
Well,
some
if they
new
have
buses.
18%, they're gonna purchase out these new buses, but the issue is that we don't own those buses. They're the one that own those buses. Why should we buy buses for them?
Well, we pay the fuel though.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean,
Yeah.
So here is my concern, as a parent of a child who has gone on field trips on buses, but they break down a lot. What kind of guarantees are we getting for all of this extra money? That the buses will be serviceable, won't be breaking
Yeah.
down on long field trips on a regular basis,
so a couple
will be
of
on
questions.
time for sporting events and other things.
So
This has been part of the
this
discussion.
is part of the discussion. So I do want to say that buses in each one of the companies do break down some more than others. But a couple of the things that we're discussing, not discussing that will be in the contract is the cameras working, report that the cameras are working to the district every week. So there are some safeguards that we're putting that were not in the initial contract. One is on time. We're looking at putting in an app that parents can see where the buses are. So if they're getting late, high school and middle school may not, parents may not, well, high school may not, but middle school and elementary parents do want to see the buses coming late where the bus is located. So that's one we're gonna put in. We're looking at, the cameras have to be working. And so one of the things that we've done is penalty. So, they don't like it. So if the camera's not working, there's a penalty. If, we don't get a report, there's a penalty. And so, these are things that.
What if
we
they break down?
Well, we didn't put that one, if they break
If
down.
they break down, there's a penalty. If they're late to an event, arriving, getting
Late-
our students there,
late is-
whatever.
Late is a penalty.
Late
is
has
a
become an issue with, especially with sporting events. I mean, with our students in school too, but with sporting events and stuff like that, not showing up on time.
So one of the things we tracking, why some of the buses are late, and, one of the things that happen here more than other school districts is that if there's not an adult to pick up a child, our buses are two-tier, meaning if they're finished with Windham Center, then we use them for that child, for example. But if they drop off their kid and a kid is not, an adult is not there to pick up the child, they have to bring the child back. And so that delay, whatever here, they're coming back to. So they're coming back to take the high school students to a field trip somewhere, and that bus, that delay. So some of those things we have to work with parents also, because they don't leave the child. They're not an adult to pick up the child, they have to bring the child back to the school, and then that delayed around another 10 or 15 minutes.
Is there a sample of a contract someplace that has some sort of a repercussion?
So we don't do
for-
it, we work on an attorney contract, we work with Schumann and Goodman, and so they look at contract and then give us the model, and we sit down with them and say, we want this included, and so that's how we work with the contract. So they bring their expertise of what they see and what is legal and what is not
So
legal.
could we ask if there's such a thing?
No, I can ask Schumann and Goodman.
I mean, they're asking for a hefty sum of money for an increase. They have expectations. We also have expectations that our buses arrive on time, that they don't break down, that the cameras are working. for the safety of our students and also for the safety of other students on the bus if there's an incident or something like that. All of these things are our expectations now, and if we're gonna rise and give them the extra money, then they're gonna have to rise and put in the extra effort, not only to merit it, but to make sure that our children are appropriately cared for.
So last year we used the class that had to do with arriving late, and it worked for us, so, they diminished their late buses, and the class said that we reduced them by $250 every day that a bus is late. And so because teacher has to wait outside with the students, what we did, we took that amount of money that we did not pay MJ, and we divided it between the teachers that waited outside, we paid the teachers. So we used it last year, and so we could see like near Windham, for example, a school that the buses were always late, and, some other schools. But, we will use that option again, that, I would say that leverage that we have in the contract, and they know that. And they know that we would use it.
Because they're not afraid to penalize if the people going on the trip are late. I paid for the buses for Project Grad, because I'm the treasurer, and when I arrived, it was more than what we'd agreed to, and she said you were 12 minutes late leaving, because we were waiting for a student to show up.
She made you.
So
they
we
made
had
you
to pay extra. So they're not afraid to do it. So in that same token, I think that this board should direct
Yeah.
whoever the negotiators are, that, we need to be more aggressive with our negotiations as well.
Well, I can tell you, we are very aggressive with this one. They have never
don't
seen a
doubt
contract like this one. This one is very, very aggressive.
Okay, Murphy?
So on the issue of breakdowns, I agree with you, except that they're school buses and there's a lot of them, there's a
Well,
lot of
sometimes
mileage.
there's-
So, yeah, but their engineers there's an actuarial calculation of how often breakdowns should occur. So you can actually say beyond a certain limit. Okay, so the occasional breakdown's gonna happen, it's almost an act of God. We can say, okay, up to a certain amount, it's forgivable, after that, if there's a charge.
Okay.
So you can actually probably get some engineers to figure out what a reasonable number is for that.
Is there any other, Mark?
Yeah, I would congratulate the administration on getting this to this point, because I think the one thing we need to keep in mind is that there was no one else bidding for this contract.
Right.
If M&J did not need to move at all, we were stuck behind the 8 ball.
Oh, definitely.
We
So I
got
would-
no,
I would
right,
definitely-
good point, Mark, we got no
Definitely
other bids.
Agree with, that they did a good job negotiating the contract, since I negotiate all day long for my job. So without an alternative, we did a good job. It's important to get as many concessions as we can for late and for breakdowns and whatnot, but as long as they're the only game in town, they get the call quite a bit of the shots.
And Mr. Doyle, they remind me that every time we start a negotiation, by the way, we did put out for for bidding. We did get 5 requests for proposal, not proposal, 5 requests questioning. 5 companies did attend the orientation that we have, but at the end of the day, when they submitted the bidding, and this is normal. Everybody have their own territory. And so we received 1.
But it's probably not legal.
I know.
Yeah, but
Bus companies have the state
Pretty
pretty
hard
well
pressed.
divided up, yeah.
it's pretty well divided up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to the people in garbage and in buses. They don't control who bids for what. So let's.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this, or should we just encourage the negotiating team to move forward and
Get the
get this
best deal.
done?
Yeah,
The best deal
option
possible.
B, I'm hearing from you guys am I hearing correctly that
Yeah.
option B is where you, and that's the one that we were inclining with.
Okay,
Good, so in good shape.
thank you. So we have 1, 2, 3 action items on the agenda. And the first one is recommended approval of revision of the board policy on graduation requirements. This is the second reading, and so I'm going to hand it over to you, Ilda.
Can we just take a moment to congratulate our champ who just
Oh,
arrived?
Coach Risley! Congratulations! We acknowledged your national award earlier on in the meeting, and please come up and take a bow.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you very much. It's a great honor. So, and my wife and I were out there last week, and it was tickled pink to bring this back to them.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you, Ilda.
All right, so our first is the graduation requirement, 61464 the changes that have happened. Does anybody have any questions or that we're requesting?
Can we get a motion on the floor?
I move we accept policy 6416,
Second.
whatever it is.
4-6.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion
Okay.
made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
Unanimous? Okay, then we have recommended approval of revision of board policy regarding magnet schools enrollment outside of attendance districts.
Yes.
And this is the second reading. We discussed this a little bit at the previous meeting.
5117.11. So,
Recommend approval of the revision of board policy 511.
517.11.
5117.11.
Motion made by Murphy, seconded by Jaime. Any discussion? Tracy?
Dr. Garcia, I want to thank you for your email today with the information. It just seems like we're doing a policy revision for a small number of students. And I understood some of them had been told they were grandfathered in as well already. And I'm not sure where that originated from, because that should have come from the board. I don't know who grandfathered them in, but I'm just wondering why we're doing all this revision for just 6 or 8 children.
Okay, so 2 points to mention here that I think need to be taken into consideration. You're right, it's a small number of students, we're talking about 6 students, that are affected, by this. But I think it's important to note that the policy was changed in 2016. And these students were already in the program in 2014. So if their parents were not informed that this was a requirement or part of the program, at that time they could make a decision. If they were not informed of that, then they couldn't make that decision. I think it's a small price to pay and not the price, because there's only 6 of them. And I gave you the grade that they're, I think 2 of them are in 8th grade, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So I think this would put the board in a very good position, number one, to when these students graduate. The only students that are grandfathered are these 6 students, no one else. But I do think, because the board revised this policy in 2016, maybe at that time when the board revised the policy, they should have taken that into consideration, but we did not. As I said before, there's lots of things that we need to address with magnet school, and magnet school is not black and white. Hartford have different rules, New Haven have different rules. We're the only one that have the rule of 66-33. There's no other magnet school in the state of Connecticut. I have the director of magnet school today at Barrows. No one have this, so it's very complicated the way how our policy is written, and I will recommend some revision to it later. But this is not a Band-Aid, this is really a solution to the situation. I will put it to an end to it with these 6 students that, their parents did not know in 2014 that this will come up. And we made the revision in 2016 and did not tell them at that time. So, and by the way, it doesn't affect the numbers. I do think, because we have in-district and out-of-district and staff in-district and staff out-of-district, it becomes much more complicated than any one of the other magnet program in the state of Connecticut that don't have all of those nuances. I do think this is a good resolution, this is not it.
Thank
Any,
you.
Tracy, do you have anything?
No, I
more?
said thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving this policy? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to say one thing. Is the intention of the Office of Choice in Connecticut that once a student is in a magnet school, unless they withdraw, that they should stay in the program. So
Yeah,
they do
that's why
not
I voted
support,
for it.
and so the issue that we have is in district or out of district, we're taking them out of the program. And they're very clear that's something they're not going to give us a waiver. Once the student is in the program, unless the parents withdraw the student from the program, the student should stay in the program.
Okay. Then we have one more action item, recommended approval of revision of board policy 3323, procurement, business, non-instructional operations.
I move we approve.
Motion
Policy-
made by Tracy.
3323.
Second?
Second.
Susie? Any discussion? I see you came for this, but I don't know whether there's much to discuss. Do people have any questions? No, we've had a presentation on it already. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. So that's done. And I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
We'll be going to executive session for purposes of attorney-client communication regarding steps concerning a forensic investigation and possible action.
Second.
Who other than board members is invited into this meeting?
Only board members.
Board members and our board attorney and the forensic auditor.
Yeah, the forensic auditing firm and the attorney.
Okay.
Everybody else is.
We say
is-
good night to
is-
you.
Is, can get ready to leave. Thank you very much.
You have to,
Oh, yes, I need a vote on it. Motion made by Tracy and seconded by Mark. Oh, and I'll say it again. For discussion concerning an attorney-client communication regarding steps concerning a forensic investigation and possible action. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you, and I'll take over the minutes of the executive